Morning, everyone. Got a couple of things to share with you here. Let's be clear about what happened last night. The President of the United States threatened a veto on the Israel funding package. Chuck Schumer then said that he would put a blockade up in the Senate, and he had 166 House Democrats who followed Leader Hakeem Jeffries off that cliff. They took that lead and they blocked the funding. Let's be clear about this. That bill provided exactly the amount of funding that the President himself had requested. It was $14.3 billion that we passed 3 months ago. And then we added to it to replace our stockpiles and our munitions on what's happening in that region. There is no reason whatsoever for them to object to the contents of that bill. They're doing it for political purposes. It's bad for national security. It's also terrible policy and terrible politics. The President of the United States has a 37% approval rating. If they're going to follow that lead, I think they did it to their detriment. And it's a very shameful thing at a time when our ally Israel needs the help desperately.
Mr. Speaker, does this put you in a bind, though, if they're able to move a bill in the Senate that deals with both Ukraine and Israel here? Because you just pushed for Israel. You would have been skeptical of aid for Ukraine here, but does that put you in a bind if they move something over there and send it back to the House?
Look, we'll see what the Senate does. We're allowing the process to play out, and we'll handle it as it is sent over. I have made very clear that you have to address these issues on their own merits. And Israel desperately needs the assistance. Everyone knows that. Things have changed pretty dramatically since we passed that first Israel package in the House 3 months ago. Everyone knows the tensions have escalated, and we need to support it there. So we'll address that. We'll see what the Senate does. We spend a lot of time on the House side awaiting the Senate's action, and it's frustrating sometimes, but that's the way the process plays out.
On impeachment, I mean, what happened yesterday with the vote on Secretary Mayorkas? Why bring that to the floor if you didn't have the votes? And will you hold another vote to impeach?
Yeah, on impeachment, last night was a setback, but democracy is messy. We live in a time of divided government. We have a razor-thin margin here, and every vote counts. Sometimes when you're counting votes and people show up when they're not expected to be in the building, it changes the equation. But listen, we have a duty and a responsibility to take care of this issue. We have to hold the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security accountable. Mayorkas needs to be held accountable. The Biden administration needs to be held accountable. And we will pass those articles of impeachment. We'll do it on the next round.
Mr. Speaker, what would you say to Americans concerned that Congress isn't able to do basic functions?
Well, it's just simply not true. We're governing here. Sometimes it's messy. The framers anticipated that you would have a system where people with very different philosophical viewpoints that come from different parts of the country and different constituencies would have different ideas on how to resolve their problems. But what they also anticipated is that we'd be able to get in a room and arm wrestle over public policy and come to consensus to move the ball forward for the most people. That is what's happening here. You're seeing the messy sausage making, the process of democracy play out. And it's not always clean, it's not always pretty, but the job will be done at the end of the day.
Some of your critics will say this shows your inexperience, and Congressman Massey says getting rid of Kevin McCarthy was an unmitigated disaster for your party. What do you say to that?
Well, look, it was a mess what happened here, but we're cleaning it up, and Massey's one of my dear friends and colleagues, and I don't think that this is a reflection on the leader, it's a reflection on the body itself and the place where we've come in this country. Look, the nation is divided. We lament that, right? The differences, the chasm between the two parties right now is wider than it's ever been. And there are lots of emotions, and we live in the age of social media and 24-hour news cycle. You know, there were previous Congresses where a gaggle like this would not even have been possible. So we're in a different time. But what we need to do in a time like this, in a time of great challenge, is lead on principle, and that's what we're doing. Again, the process is messy sometimes, but the job will be done. And we're going to govern this country. It's the greatest country in the history of the world. The entire world is counting upon us. We have steady hands at the wheel. We'll get through it. Everybody take a deep breath. It's a long game. We're going to get the job done.